What is up, plastic addicts? Welcome to the Sci-Fi Model Podcast, episode 1. Just a very, very quick introduction, and this one's going to be a little less structured than all the episodes moving forward. Just want to kind of tell the story of why the podcast exists, and what is Jason's Model Shop, how it came to be, those things, excuse me. So there's going to be a bit more stream of consciousness in that sense, whereas episodes moving forward are going to focus on a specific topic that will be discussed versus some sort of extended rambly mess. So that's kind of my stunning introduction. All right. So having said that, the first thing is, why is the Sci-Fi Model Podcast? This is specifically a niche podcast designed to talk about sci-fi model builds. Now, that's not limited to just, Star Trek or Star Wars or things like that. It is meant to be a place to discuss all things sci-fi, and will extend into pop culture and entertainment, movies and TV. So, we may work on a 350 refit Enterprise and talk about that, but we might also talk about the car from Supernatural, Baby, I believe it is, or Warhammer 40,000. Because even though it's tabletop gaming, there's a huge element of building and detailing as part of that. And we're not just going to talk about specific modeling subjects. We will talk about, things model builders face. For example, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he had suggested, overcoming issues. Sometimes we screw things up, lack of skills, how we overcome when faced with challenges. I would like to talk about motivation, because that can be a huge issue for some. So, moving forward after this introductory episode, we will be looking at a ongoing conversation about various topics. I do have some guests lined up, and we'll talk about their area We'll talk about their areas of expertise, or we'll have a shared discussion about a specific topic we've both built. For example, the 1400 Galaxy class / Enterprise, or the 1000 Strange New World Enterprise. Now, personally, I have a huge skew toward Star Trek, but I've been buying up Star Wars kits and putting them in the stash, like the REVELL Razor Crest. I may pick up a AMT Razor Crest, because I've heard that the amount of detail from one to the other is severely lacking, and here in Canada the price point's very similar. And what I mean is, the AMT one is on the shelf because AMT Round 2, whatnot, has the license for North America. But some model shops are importers, and they're able to get items from Europe. Sometimes you can get it off Amazon, whatever the case. So we can talk about comparisons between models and reviews, and there's so many subjects. And this is a form where I don't think is being used to its best. Best isn't the right word. To its full potential. And I decided to go this route because it's a chance to create what I'm going to call passive content. And as a model maker, YouTube is great. Instagram, TikTok are great, but it requires all your attention to consume. So you have to watch. It's audiovisual. You have to watch and listen. Whereas a podcast, you can passively listen to it, and it's like, not quite the same as listening to music, but same idea. I can put it on and listen while I'm building. It doesn't require all your attention. And that's kind of the reasoning for going in this route of the podcast. And it's not just going to be an audio podcast. Ideally, as much as is possible, it's going to be a video podcast as well. Meaning, there will be a video version for people who like to consume that way, but this is primarily being made for the audio medium. And I apologize for my squeaky chair. It's comfortable enough that's never going away. So just, if you hear it squeak and creak and clunk, that is what it is. And I a lot. It is what it is. So, one of the challenges I faced kind of getting to this point of doing a podcast was a lot of resistance, a lot of pushback. Like, I talked to people like, no, you can't have model making in an audio only form. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can, because it's a chance to, like you said, passive modelers to be able to passively consume model making content while still being able to make models. But I did a little bit of research, and I found that, and this is only anecdotal. It's only come from a handful of people that I've talked to. There are a number of podcasts out there, but they are very, very long. The ones I sampled tend to be in the 2-3 hour range. And after listening to them, they tend to ramble. I mean, I can't think of a more PC or nicer way to put it. And be very unfocused. So that's why Sci-Fi Model Podcast is going to be one podcast, one topic. And we're going to keep it tight. Episodes. It's likely episodes will be, depends how the conversation goes. I mean, I'm going to say the 30-minute to 60-minute range. And if they go along, we'll split up into a 2-part. And once again, I'm going to speak from my own experience. More than an hour kind of gets long because most commutes are in the half an hour to hour range. Like people who seriously commute to work. So it gives you a chance to listen in the car if you can't listen at home. And we want to keep it tight. And that is the goal. So the Sci-Fi Model Podcast is going to be about sci-fi elements, pop culture, entertainment, movies, all those subjects. So like I said, it's not just going to be starships. I mean, round 2, AMT, excuse me, or is it MPC, I'm not sure, has the California Highway patrol car. Now you could do that as the Chips car. Or you can do it up, strip it down, do it as the green Monaco from Hunter. The possibilities are huge, and we can cover a huge swath while still being very focused in the sci-fi, kind of start focus there, sci-fi, maybe on the outside pop culture, outside of that, movies, TV, entertainment, and that's how you get your Knight Riders and your, I can't think of another subject right now, Night Boat from The Simpsons. So this is what it's going to be, and that is where we want to go, and we're very, very I'm very hopeful it's going to be a fun time, and I think having lots of guests isn't going to be a problem. I've talked to a number of people who are keen to do it. But I'm going to start out with just me, so you can get used to me as the host and what I have to say, and then we'll expand from there. So, now I'm going to move on to talking about how I got to where I am with Jason's model shop, and what I do it and why I do. So it's going to be a bit more personal. This one, despite what I said before, is probably a little bit rambly, but I'll kind of keep it focused because I didn't script it. I'm just going to let it kind of flow from my brain. So if this is, you don't want to hear about that, then kind of this is the point to cut it off and come back for next episode, and we will have a specific topic that we're going to discuss. So, moving on to the origin story of Jason's Model Shop, which leads to the Sci-Fi Model Podcast. Okay, so this is back to me, and this is I'm going to tell you my story. I have been building models for many, many years. My first one was probably in '91, the AMT 537 scale refit Enterprise, and the little 3-ship set. Those are kind of the first ones, and gotta tell you, starting with the 537 was that was a tall order, but it was reasonably, like, back then, there were a number of kits readily available, and it kind of expanded from there. So you had the 537 refit, you had the 1400 Enterprise D, you had the little 2500 scale 3-ship set, and a whole bunch of 25th anniversary reissues, like the Klingon Cruiser and the Bridge, and the Romulan Bird of Prey wasn't really available. The shuttlecraft Galileo was. And things kind of expanded, but there was a kind of a point where, like, there was the Vorcha class, and there was the adversary set that had the Frankie Marauder and the Klingon Bird of Prey and the Romulan Warbird. It wasn't until mid to late 90s that they kind of had it was popular enough there was kind of a boom. And then you had like the Reliant and the Excelsior and the Bird of Prey, and there were a number of expansions, various levels of quality. Anyway, point is, that's not really what the story's about. But I had built a number of these, like a number of them, because they were cheap. They were like $20. And even in, back then as a kid, you could, mow a couple lawns and, oh, boom, I got $20, I can go buy a model kit. I wish it were still like that. But, so I did that for a number of years, but I wasn't really very good at it. Just kind of bought them and built them. But there wasn't the resource that exists today, and I'm sure many modelers will remember this. The resources weren't there. I mean, there weren't LEDs. The internet didn't really exist. There was no way to, unless you had a local group, there was no way to talk to anyone. I mean, the library didn't have any books. So, I just plugged along and then just not satisfied with the results, and eventually just kind of stopped doing it. I didn't open a window. There we go. It's, I just opened the windows, so if you hear some background noise, I can't filter out. That's what it is, but it's a beautiful day today. So, years went by, and life happens, and, I don't want to say career, but jobs. Got married. Didn't get married till afterwards. Anyway, I was with my current wife, and we got pregnant, and we'd bought a house, and kind of everything seemed good. And unfortunately, our daughter was stillborn. She didn't make it. She was about 6 months. Didn't quite cross the finish line to be a preemie that made it. And it was a hard time, as I'm sure I don't need to say. And even then, back in 2012, there wasn't a lot of support for dads. It's like, oh, how's your wife? How's your wife? How's your wife? I tried to, I talked to a counselor that didn't really seem to fit, and I'm not sure. I can't recall the catalyst for why, but I decided I was going to get back into model building. It's whether just subconsciously I was like, hey, this activity is going to keep your mind occupied. Like, you can focus on something and let your grief work its magic, or not work its magic, but just let process as you go. And how effective it was in that way, I don't know, but I do know that it did help maintain a certain amount of sanity. Because going to work was hard; it just kind of seemed pointless. And so yeah, it started as this. I got the Enterprise C. Round two was reissuing older kits at that time. Like the Enterprise B, Enterprise C, the Vulcan shuttle. Some kind of weird choices for releases, maybe just because they hadn't been out in so long. And I do believe the Enterprise C was always kind of a popular subject. So they were re-releasing those. I'm like, you know what? Okay. I love Star Trek. I used to like modeling. Maybe I can do it. So I kind of restarted and got the Enterprise C and worked on that, and it was fun. I'm like, I'm gonna make some modifications. I cut the nacelle pylons down to give it that look of like the Excalibur and the Yamaguchi without doing the full edition of all the extra parts, just to give a different look. Like, okay, so I can modify things, and that was fine. And I was also kind of watching YouTube a lot, and I came across some really interesting people. Primarily, those were TrekWorks and Steve Neal. Those were kind of the big ones. And Steve Neal was the bigger one early on because of his just daily updates from Steve Neal's garage, who was working on all this stuff. And it was very inspiring. Like, wow, look at this guy. Look at the things he can do. And like, oh, he worked on the motion picture, and he worked on Ghostbusters. I mean, some of my favorite movies. And then, of course, as I'm watching more, I find out. Now, let me back up. I want to say that I've actually reached out to Steve Neal to talk about some of this stuff, just because his story isn't my story to tell, but there are some parallels. So I reached out, and this is actually back in April when I was planning on doing something else, but I did say, like, hey, I'm gonna do this. I want to tell my story, and it's kind of parallels some of your things. So yes, he gave me the go ahead. So while I'm watching his stuff, his wife has terminal cancer, and so he's doing his thing. He's trying to make make money by selling things he has, or commissions, or whatnot. So he's working on like this beautiful NX-01. I know he made one for Doug Drexler, but he made one for someone else whose name I can't remember, and he put the rod in the top so the guy could hang it from the ceiling. Just interesting stuff, and he's working on some stuff for Space Force that didn't happen the way that it was supposed to. That stuff doesn't matter. Just kind of world building, I guess. Anyway, near the end, him and his wife, before she passed, were watching Battlestar Galactica. And I'd started rewatching Battlestar Galactica, and there were things I'd forgotten about the fourth season. And I'm watching it while my wife and I are watching it, while Steve Neal and his wife are watching it, and there's the issue with President Rosalind dying of cancer and her relationship with Adama, and with the Cylons, where Saul Ty and one of the Sixes have a baby that dies. And the certain amount of synchronicity there was interesting, and I think that might be one of the reasons I connected with Steve so much too. And then shortly after, his wife Jeannie, I believe, had passed, and he soldiered on, and eventually moved out of the house he was in. He met someone else, and they created the new Steve Neal studio. He's still going, and that is wonderful, and they're very happy together. And I know some people were kind of hard on him for finding a new partner so quickly, but I mean, when you're in your 60s and you've had a lifetime with someone and you know what's happening, you can still grieve and move on. Because you have time. You have time. I mean, what else is there to say? Anyway, so Steve Neal was a huge influence on me, and that's part of the reason I started, experimenting with things. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But then there was also Boyd from TrekWorks. And there's just something about Boyd, just his conversational manner was very good. And, he just kind of, he's like working, more models, and same thing, interesting techniques, and walking you through the process. I'm like, well, shit, I can do that stuff. And so from like 2013 to 2015 was a time where I built a number of things, did a lot of experimenting and trying things that I hadn't done before. And in the process of coming up with the Sci-Fi Model Podcast, I kind of decided to start something new on my YouTube channel where I've gone back to the beginning. And I started a series called Retro Build Rewind, where the builds I did record, I'm going to recut them, do a new voiceover and talk about them, and just what worked, what didn't work, what techniques did I gain, or in 2013 that I'm still using 10 years later, what didn't work, what went away and why, and just the lessons learned. So, in 2012 I have this, this awful life event. And through the hobby, even though we weren't, close or in constant communication, you find your brothers in arms, I guess. And just a way to keep moving forward. And kind of that's what model making did for me. So after the Enterprise C, I just kept going. I'm like, okay, well, let's... I actually did this out of order. No, I did in the right order. Pardon me. The video I just posted on the K7 space station, the K7 space station was the next thing I built. And it was huge because, all right, now I've got a model kit. I'm going to light it for the first time. And I'm going to try some airbrushing techniques. Like, I hadn't really airbrushed. I always used spray cans. Okay, so we're going to try airbrushing. We're going to try new airbrushing techniques. And, a little bit of modification required. I had to cut window masks, or cut, masking tape to make window masks. All these different things. K7, now that I think of it, was a extremely important model in my path to becoming the professional modeler I am now. And I say professional because I do commissions and sell them, so, I've sold a number of them, so I consider myself an authority on the subject somewhat. There's still tons of people who have different techniques and are way, way, way better than me, but I'm pretty good. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so K7 I learned a lot. And then I did the ECTO one, where I built my own circuit board and figured out how to get lighting into it. Now, this is 2013. Like, strip LED is available now, but all the SMD options, they're not available yet. So I'm working with like 3mm LEDs. And it's not perfect, but I make it work, and I'm selling that to a gentleman in the UK who is very happy with it. And I kind of lost track. And oh yes, and then I tackled the refit enterprise, the 1350 refit, which wasn't perfect, but I did it, and I did practical spotlights, and I did so many things on it that, looking back now, were huge accomplishments. Because if anyone's built that model, you know how challenging it is. Anyway, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just kind of giving a bit of background, and then I did a number of other things, but those were kind of those are the big ones that got things rolling. And with every new model, sometimes I learn new techniques since then. Other times it's just the fundamentals I learned from those first few coming back into it were huge. And eventually, because I respected Boyd and Steve, and who were the others? Because I didn't really watch Simon Merckx. There were a couple of others, but they didn't have the same impact. So I had gone through all that, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to start my own YouTube channel too, because I got to, just like these guys, I got to share this stuff and get this stuff out there. And around, I guess it was 2013, Boyd, TrekWorks, had launched Sci-Fi Model Action. And I hadn't really been on forums before, because I'd been on a few and just seemed like kind of messy things. People were kind of catty, whatnot. But he started this thing, and it was a very, very good community. There are people I'm still in touch with now, 10 years later. Most of them are casual acquaintances, but there are two people who I would consider, despite the distances between Canada and Florida and Texas, Match Model Shop and HDA Model Works, I would consider very, very close friends. I talk to them on the regular. And if it hadn't been for these life events and, stumbling into these things when I did, I wouldn't have these wonderful people in my life. And I'm going to circle back to that. I keep making models, whatnot. I do the videos, and then I, start doing commissions. I haven't done a lot. I've done a handful, and it's been fine. It's been challenging, to say the least. One of my most recent ones I built for a gentleman in Virginia, and I was on the last step of a first pilot 350 Enterprise, and the clear coat wouldn't cure. It was just kind of a weird gummy mess, and I had to strip and refinish the whole model from scratch. Luckily I didn't have to rebuild it, but it took a couple months to get back to where I was. And that was, I almost canceled and gave him his money back. Anyway, so it's been ups and downs. It's been ups and downs, and been trying to find the path forward with Jason's model shop, and commissions are fine, but it's limiting in that, yes, I can make one of these wonderful pieces, and someone gets one at the end. I can share the process, but in the end, it only really has the biggest benefit is only kind of the person who ends up with the end product. And thinking back to what the model making community has done for me over the years, I kind of switched gears, and I want to switching to a more community focused approach, where I'm going to continue. And I'm using all the social platforms, Instagram and TikTok. I'm actually most active on now, because it's a little simpler to make the videos, and I can kind of do them on the fly, whereas YouTube requires a lot more time and energy to put together long-form content. And I've never been super successful on YouTube, which is frustrating, and I guarantee other modelers feel the same way, and I think that's a topic we're going to cover later. of why does this channel get promoted and I'm doing the same thing and it doesn't. And how do you keep going when the return on your investment is so little? But that's a topic for another episode. But I want to switch over to a more community-based focus where I am going to continue doing everything I do. The infrastructure is there. Do the builds, talk with the builds, the process, the steps, how I do things, make myself a little bit more available to be, reach out to me through any of my social platforms to ask tech support questions or do a commission. I'm not against it, but it's not my primary focus now. I would like to continue building a community because of, I'm repeating myself because of what it did for me, how much it helped me. Just knowing there's other people out there. And they don't have to be your close friends. They don't have to understand everything you're going through. But just to be able to work on something and commiserate with others and just have a group you can go to. And this is a thing that without the statistics in front of me, I know that this is kind of an aging demographic where, it's a lot of older men, middle-aged to senior, who are kind of doing this, and as men get older, we don't maintain those relationships, and loneliness and depression can be an issue. So that's why I think the community aspect is so important. So that's definitely what I'm gonna focus on. And I have launched a couple things. I did launch a Buy Me a Coffee for Jason's Model Shop, and that is there for anyone who feels they're getting good value from the content. There's no special perks. I'm available for people to reach out, whether or not they buy me a coffee. But anyone who chooses to go that route helps support me and allows me to continue doing this and engaging and building something. And I have also launched I've immediately set up a Patreon for the Sci-Fi Model Podcast because a lot of work putting this together. The recording isn't particularly difficult. I mean, you still got to come up with your topics and whatnot, but much like YouTube videos, the editing process can be time consuming. So anyone who wants to support the show, that option is out there too. And I'm working on perks. I've set some up. But as listeners come in, I'm going to have a discussion about, hey, here's the perks as they are, but what works for the people listening? So those are going to be modified. And just, it's meant to be a reflection, however you look at it, whether it's the Buy Me a Coffee for the Jason's Model Shop or the Patreon for, there are perks set up in the Patreon right now, shuttlecraft level, starship level, and starbase level. I thought that might be fun. There's no expectation that people listening are going to contribute, and I don't want a digital panhandle because I really don't like that. But it is there for anyone who gets value from this content that they feel is worth contributing to allow this to continue to move forward and grow. And as I said, perks are set as they are now, but we'll have a discussion with that and modify them as it becomes apparent what's of more benefit to the listeners than anything. So having said all that, Jason's Model Shop exists because I lost my daughter, and I found community while trying to heal. And that's what I'm focusing on now, is growing community and sharing the things I do and trying to have a positive influence on people and promote a great hobby that is, I don't want to say it's dying, but I am worried about it seems to me, once again, I don't have statistics in front of me, but it seems to me the youth are not getting into it. But I could be wrong. And if I am, then great, there's worse things to be wrong about. So that is the first episode of the Scale Model Podcast. What it's going to be, a bit of my story, my origin story, and, why I do what I do, and it is fundamentally to give back, because the model making maybe saved me. Potentially more than once. And I think that's why it's super important. So we are going to have some great episodes coming up. We're going to talk about specific subjects through the socials. Something comes to mind, hit me up and be like, hey, can you talk about this? Can you talk about this? I'm always available for DMs through all my socials. It's at Jason's Model Shop on all the platforms except Twitter/X, because I don't like that platform. But Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, etc. There's a link tree on all my socials too, so you can find me everywhere. But just remember, at Jason's Model Shop. And I hope you do come back. If I wasn't too rambly, hopefully my story was engaging enough, and that you'll come back and we'll have some more discussions and talk about the all things model making, and talk to some other great builders as well, and get their perspectives, just so it's not one person talking all the time. And I think the biggest takeaway, the biggest lesson is have fun. You're going to need it.